Hey, welcome back everybody. Happy Monday. Great to see you. Hope we all had a wonderful and restful weekend because we have a very active pattern here going through really all of this week and likely, I think, into really the end of January. And all of it is starting now with a big time storm system bringing blizzard conditions as well as a potential tornado outbreak and widespread damaging winds through much of the eastern half of the country. And if you happen to be spared by this storm, don't get too excited because another one, as well as an Arctic air outbreak, is on the way, really going later into this week. So a very active time ahead for many of us, and really a great time to kind of catch up on maybe some of those severe weather readiness plans and also some of those cold air readiness plans. Always things you can be doing when we get these big cold outbreaks to kind of prepare your house. Now, with that said, I think a couple more things I will add. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. I say this at the beginning of every video. Don't know how I almost forgot it this time. But also like the video if you like it. Comment, let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget, if you have any interesting weather that you've had over the past couple of days, definitely make sure to send me those pictures with the form in the description. That should be labeled like viewer submission something or another. So definitely use that. And in fact, we were lucky enough to get one yesterday. This comes from Mike in Rutland, Vermont, who picked up a good amount of snow with that big storm system in the Northeast that we were talking about really through much of last week. And sure enough, a lot of places got about a foot of snow, which is what I was forecasting. So great to see that verify, and really a beautiful scene up here in Vermont. Definitely a place I'd love to visit sometime. Looks like a wonderful place to live. So thank you so much, Mike, for that picture. Alrighty. Now let's go ahead and jump into this forecast. Just to give you a game plan for the video, really much of this video is going to be about this storm system. In fact, this is probably going to be the most impactful storm we've seen really in a while. Definitely out of all the storms I can remember, I think this one is going to have the most widespread impacts from, again, very damaging severe weather to blizzard conditions, and then also major flooding likely as well for a lot of folks. So definitely going to spend really a long time on this storm. After that, though, we are going to discuss that Arctic outbreak that is really beginning right now, honestly, but especially going into the next couple of days, and then the impacts that could have, including the fact that that outbreak is going to likely fire off another major storm system going later into this week. So again, very active pattern. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. And also, timestamps will be below if you need to skip ahead to your exact location. I won't hold you to it because, again, I'm sure this video is going to be quite long. All right, so current satellite imagery, again, here's that big storm system spinning away here over the Texas Panhandle. All of these very cold cloud tops, funnily enough, indicated by those very warm colors on your map, just indicating that these storms are getting strong and they're getting high up in the atmosphere, and getting kind of towards the colder tops there near the top of the troposphere. So again, a very healthy storm system beginning to organize. Now, on current watches, warnings, and advisories, you'll notice there are not many counties in the United States currently that are spared from, widespread watches and warnings. We'll start with kind of the wintry side of things here, kind of here through northern Michigan, through Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, and back through northern Missouri, Illinois, and even northern Indiana here. These are winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. Again, a lot of snow is on the way for some of you folks here. Other folks going to start to snow and change to rain. Now, the other side of this wintry kind of mess is back down here towards eastern Kansas, northern Texas Panhandle, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and then back towards northeastern New Mexico and southeastern Colorado. This is where we have blizzard warnings for ongoing blizzard conditions throughout the day today, again, likely to cause a real mess. Same story for the Pacific Northwest, and I'll discuss this a little bit later in the video, but kind of the start of this Arctic air outbreak that we're seeing there is going to start with some snowfall, and we have blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, high wind warnings, and all other sorts of things up there for you folks in that part of the country. Now, looking at the Northeast, we do have some high wind warnings, some wind advisories, and some flash flood or just flood watches there along the I-95 corridor. Again, flood watches in green, wind warnings are going to be in those kind of mustard color, and then the beige color are the wind advisories. Now, through the southeast and the Ohio River Valley, you could drive basically from New Mexico all the way towards the Outer Banks of North Carolina and not leave a wind advisory or high wind warning through that entire stretch. Again, this storm is very powerful. It's got a lot of wind energy with it, and that is going to play huge dividends into that severe weather that we see tomorrow. So, again, just quite a very dynamic storm with high impacts all around. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the winter weather side of this, up through the northern plains, and then we'll get to the southern plains and discuss that severe weather, and then talk about the southeast, Ohio River Valley, and then eventually discuss the northeast and eastern Canada there, where we could also see some big-time snow totals. So again, going through this afternoon up here in this part of the country, the storm system begins to slowly work inland. So I think much of Nebraska, northern Kansas, a good chunk of Iowa, and even southern Missouri here, northern Missouri and southern Minnesota here, likely to get in on some snowfall. And now this is about the time the sun is setting this evening. You'll notice widespread snow falling from really much of Kansas through northern Missouri, getting into Iowa, even southern Minnesota, and kind of surrounding all of these areas. Snow will be falling through much of this evening. And that is likely to continue into the overnight, getting into about midnight tonight, snowing throughout the entire state of Iowa, still ongoing through central Kansas, northern Missouri, eastern Nebraska there, and southern Minnesota now getting in on some of that snow. I had a comment from southeastern Minnesota, I believe, yesterday. Looks like, some snow here about midnight tonight and going into the overnight hours. Now, snow also beginning to break out at this point through northern Illinois. Now, if you're watching here from central Illinois northbound, again, most of you folks were in a winter weather advisory and not a winter storm warning. Same for northern Indiana and even extreme northwestern Ohio there. And here's why. Again, heavy snow falling overnight tonight, but as we get into tomorrow morning, here comes the storm system and bringing with it a plethora of warm air out of the south. And now we're changing over to all rain through much of Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. So that's why we just have winter weather advisories in those areas. We will definitely see winter weather impacts overnight tonight, but by the time we're waking up tomorrow, likely switching back over towards a heavy rain. Now, also waking up tomorrow, snow breaking out through much of Michigan, Wisconsin, and going into tomorrow afternoon, this storm continues to crank up, bringing heavy snow continuing through Iowa, now back down into Missouri, through Wisconsin and northern Michigan. Again, a place like Detroit, tough forecast. I think we started snow, but here comes that rain line again. As this warm air is being advected very far northward here, I think we likely change back over to some rain there through southern Michigan. Now, if you're watching in northern Michigan, specifically the UP of Michigan, this is going to be an all-snow event for you through tomorrow afternoon and evening depicted on your map here. And that continues throughout the evening hours of tomorrow before finally this storm system begins to pull out by the time we're waking up on Wednesday here, and we've just got some leftover snow showers. Now, kind of breaking down snowfall totals in this part of the country. Again, a lot of it on the way. This is straight from the National Weather Service. So this is not a model. This is what your government officials who are very well educated in this are calling for. A big stretch of 6 to 12 inches of snow here from kind of western Kansas through northern Kansas, northern Missouri. Really the entire state of Iowa likely to get, widespread half a foot to a foot of snow. And down here in extreme southeastern Colorado, where we have those blizzard warnings, we could get more than a foot of snow with, again, that wind blowing. So, big-time snow totals here, and the same story for much of eastern Nebraska there. Now, moving this on up towards the Midwest here, again, a lot of healthy amounts of snow on the way. I'm going to try to move myself out of the way. Should make it a little bit easier to see. Again, here, much of Iowa, a lot of snow for you folks. Same story up here through northern Missouri as well, where we're going to see very heavy snow totals up into a good chunk of Illinois there, southern Wisconsin, and into northern Michigan. Widespread areas of half a foot to a foot of snow is going to be pretty easy to come by here. Alrighty, wind gusts will also be a problem in this part of the country. Again, we do have those blizzard warnings, so let's discuss these winds a little bit here. Again, going into this afternoon, very strong winds here, I think, into southeastern Colorado, into the Texas, Oklahoma panhandle. Winds gusting here even into northeastern New Mexico near hurricane force. That with the snow falling, obviously why we have those blizzard warnings. And going into tonight and this evening, all this wind is slowly going to spread eastbound. You'll notice now picking up here into Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, even Nebraska, widespread winds gusting near 50 miles an hour. Isolated spots could gust to 60 even for a quick moment. Now, continuing into overnight, again, blowing snow, going to be a pretty common story, I think, through much of Kansas, Nebraska, and then rain south of there, but still, quite windy as well. Now, that wind luckily does begin to slowly calm down throughout the afternoon of Tuesday and slowly moves off towards the north and east before finally, overnight Tuesday and into Wednesday, much nicer conditions begin to overtake much of this part of the country. Now, wind gusts up into the Midwest, again, same story. It's going to be gusty throughout today. Not too bad, but I think going into overnight tonight, and by the time we're waking up for our Tuesday morning, here comes that wall of wind. Widespread winds gusting up near 30, 40 miles an hour for much of the Great Lakes region. And by the time we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, here comes more of that wind energy, and those winds really gust even higher through Wednesday or overnight Tuesday and into our early Wednesday, and likely staying quite gusty through the morning hours of Wednesday here as well, before I think we'll calm down throughout the day Wednesday. All right, now let's talk about the severe weather, and let's kind of move this south a little bit. Again, things are going to get quite interesting very quickly here for a lot of folks in this general part of the country. And we already have an enhanced risk of severe weather for much of the Gulf Coast, from the Florida Panhandle through southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, southern Louisiana, and back into southeastern Texas. And even areas further north in there are in that marginal risk, from Dallas through central Mississippi and even parts of central Alabama, where, again, severe weather is going to be a problem. Now, winds will be the main threat. I think a lot of folks, no matter what, are going to see damaging winds in these highlighted spots, but that tornado threat is also very prevalent today. Excuse me. We have a 10% hatched area for tornadoes. What that means is within any 25-mile point on a map, you have a 1 in 10 shot of seeing a tornado, and that tornado could be significant, meaning EF2 or higher strength in that hatched area there on your map. So again, not something you want to take lightly this afternoon, and even going into overnight tonight. This will likely turn into a nocturnal threat. So if there was ever a night that you kind of wanted to just maybe stay up, watch some movies, and have a way to get those watches and warnings, tonight's a great time to do it. I know Monday night might not be the best, but unfortunately, we don't decide when these things arrive. That's all up to Mother Nature. So again, very important that we're staying, up to date with those watches and warnings overnight tonight. Alrighty, now let's kind of discuss this area, in terms of radar imagery. Again, already we're seeing this kind of general line of strong storms and gusty winds kind of here through much of eastern Texas. What we need to watch for, though, this afternoon and evening is down here. Look at some of these individual storm cells beginning to develop and work in off of the Gulf of Mexico. And again, going into this afternoon and evening, this is whenever we'll likely see some tornado watches issued, and probably even a couple tornado warnings. You'll notice this big area of kind of potential supercell development here along southeastern Texas and into Louisiana, where again we have plenty of ingredients here to support that severe weather. Now, continuing this into overnight tonight, again, that severe weather threat continues to the south, but we also have rain breaking out to the north here through much of Arkansas, southern Missouri, and again, as we talked about earlier, those snow chances further to the north there. Also seeing some snow here on the backside through Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle. Again, already looked at the snowfall totals there. Now, going into overnight tonight, into about midnight, I think this part of the country calms down a bit. Still very windy as this low pressure continues to strengthen. But again, most of that shield of precipitation now moving off towards the east, towards the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley, with just some leftover snow on the backside through Oklahoma here. But that quickly lifts north with that storm system. And by the time we're waking up tomorrow, about 10 o'clock, here we are. Much nicer conditions through this part of the country, and we can kind of pick up whatever pieces we need to from all of that wind and potential severe weather. Now, this is not the only day of severe weather. Again, going into tomorrow, another area of big-time severe weather. And in fact, this was upgraded this morning from the Storm Prediction Center from a slight risk to now an enhanced risk. So this is a level 3 out of 5 on our chart. I know the wording is kind of horrible. You hear slight, enhanced, and moderate, and sometimes you get them confused. But this is level 3 out of 5 is what you need to know. And again, this stretches from the Florida Panhandle through the Big Bend up northwards there into southern Georgia and coastal South Carolina and North Carolina, where again tomorrow, tornadoes will be a problem. Obviously, wind's the bigger deal here, but again, another kind of area here that we have 2 of 10% hatched areas for tornadoes. So again, like I said earlier, within a 25-mile point on your map, there's a 1 in 10 shot that you're going to see a tornado, and that could even once again be significant, meaning EF2 or higher, which is very capable of damaging and even destroying homes, specifically mobile homes. If you live in a mobile home, I know this part of the country is riddled with them. For better or for worse, you gotta have a safety plan, okay? If you can spend the day tomorrow maybe with a friend who's in a more sturdy structure, that might not be a bad idea. And in fact, I would not be surprised to see some school closures tomorrow through much of the southeast, from North Carolina through South Carolina and even into Georgia and potentially Florida. Would not be out of the question at all. Now, you'll notice we have two separate areas kind of to investigate here, if you will. One, the Florida Panhandle, that's going to be leftover convection from today that moves on through, that during the morning hours could see, a tornado risk. This up here towards the Carolinas, this is going to be a resurgence of instability in the afternoon as that squall line pushes eastbound and likely interacting with that warm air and plenty of wind energy. In fact, really off the chart wind energy here is going to, lead to the potential for some strong to damaging tornadoes. All right, so let's go ahead and time it out for you. Again, today, not too bad in this part of the country. I'll bring this up to about 4 o'clock. If you're watching in the Carolinas, Tennessee, Georgia, overall still, relatively quiet. Nothing too crazy here. But going into overnight tonight, this is when the rain begins to move in for much of our folks in Tennessee, Kentucky, here again into sections of eastern Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, also dealing with that rain. And again, this is overnight tonight and about 10 o'clock, still dealing with that severe weather threat down here along the Gulf Coast from New Orleans through Biloxi, Mobile, and even back towards Pensacola, where, again, very strong wind energy overlapping with enough instability is going to lead to some problems here. Now, moving this further ahead into time, about the time we're going into overnight, that very, unstable atmosphere continues to slowly work northward, and this is 4 in the morning. Look at this. If you're commuting tomorrow morning anywhere from Birmingham towards Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, back towards Atlanta, I should say, and up towards Greenville, Spartanburg, Columbia, plenty of southeastern cities here, it's going to be one heck of a commute. Very windy conditions at this point, likely very heavy rainfall, or at least moderate for most folks, but embedded areas of heavy rainfall, and again, look at this warm sector beginning to continue to rise northward. We're getting a little bit of clearing from convection here ahead of this very strong squall line, and this is why, as this pushes eastbound, we've got that area for a 1 in 10 shot of a significant tornado during the morning hours of tomorrow. So I'll move this ahead a little bit more into about 7 a.m., and this squall line is really taking a life of its own at this point. Very impressive to see this at 7 o'clock in the morning. Likely going to get a real lightning show out of this. Very strong straight line winds. And that's just from the storms themselves. We're still going to have very windy conditions after this moves through and ahead of it as well. So again, likely going to see very heavy rainfall. I'm concerned about flooding here in northern Alabama, northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, specifically those kind of southern slopes here in upstate South Carolina. I'll show you that here in a second. In fact, I mentioned it in yesterday's video. Kind of places like Lake Jocassee, Lake Toxaway, Walhalla, Pickens, Travelers Rest, some of those areas where oftentimes we wring out just enough extra precipitation thanks to that topography, could easily see some flooding issues tomorrow. Now, going through the early morning hours of tomorrow, the squall line continues to push eastbound, bringing with it embedded tornadoes, likely especially on the southern end of that squall line, and very gusty winds and flooding on the northern side here. So again, 11 a.m. tomorrow, that flooding threat, that high wind threat, likely through much of upstate South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg, up towards Asheville, back through Athens, and eventually working into the Charlotte area. Now, at the same time, again, tomorrow afternoon, look at this warm sector again beginning to build here ahead of that squall line. And at this point, we could even get a little bit of daytime heating to potentially really kind of ramp things up here into eastern South Carolina, southeastern Georgia, and eventually even into eastern North Carolina. And because of that, going into tomorrow afternoon and evening, we got some kind of individual cells here trying to work in off the Atlantic northbound. And those could cause, again, many tornado problems through eastern North Carolina, eastern South Carolina. But if you're lucky enough to not have a tornado warning tomorrow from that, here comes that line of a lot of rain and wind energy on the backside here through much of North Carolina, likely moving through Charlotte about 1 to 5, about that general time frame. Same story for Columbia, and eventually working through the South Carolina coastline as the sun is going down and into the North Carolina coastline as we get into the overnight. Now on the backside here, cold air moves in, some leftover kind of rain showers overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, and potentially even some snow showers here on the backside. Not out of the question for you folks in Tennessee, Kentucky, and especially the mountains of North Carolina, where we could get a pretty nice northwest flow event going into our Wednesday morning. Alrighty, I know I'm moving my face all around here on the screen. If I happen to miss a point that my face should have not been on a map, I do apologize. Hopefully my words were able to discuss what I meant to be showing. So I do apologize about that. But anyway, we'll move on here. And again, we just looked at radar for this part of the country. Now let's zoom in on some wind gusts. We'll start in the Ohio River Valley here and then eventually work into the southeast, where both places, again, littered with wind advisories this afternoon for what will likely, again, be a big-time wind event going into tomorrow. Now, this is this afternoon. You'll notice winds already kind of beginning to pick up here for a lot of folks here through Tennessee and even into Kentucky, but it's overnight tonight, and by the time we're getting into very early tomorrow morning, look at some of these wind gusts down here in Tennessee. I think this model is overdoing it a little bit, so maybe subtract 10, 15 miles an hour from this, but widespread gusts up to 50, isolated spots gusting up near 60, 65 miles an hour here through much of central Tennessee and up towards the Cumberland Plateau, and also a big-time downsloping event here in eastern Tennessee. Some of these mountains out here easily going to gust kind of towards, hurricane force as kind of the wind is, flowing down the mountain there. So again, very important there, and these winds continue into the early morning hours of tomorrow. Again, this is why I said school closures tomorrow likely going to be widespread in this part of the country. I know in South Carolina, at least, I think it's sustained winds of 40, gust up to 50, or maybe it's gust up to 40, sustain of 30. Either way, it's in that ballpark, and I don't know how other states do it, but we're going to see a lot of very strong winds tomorrow morning in this part of the country, and it's going to be quite problematic for a lot of folks. And then by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, as the storm is getting closer and moving up through Missouri, more winds continuing to gust during the afternoon tomorrow, gusting into tropical storm strength, and that continues even into the overnight tomorrow, into the early morning hours of Wednesday before we finally clear out. Now, again, this is a very long-lived event, so starting really late tonight into early tomorrow morning, very strong winds move through, and those continue for about 24 hours or so here. So this is not going to be a quick, one-and-done event here. Those winds are going to be lasting for a while, and also very rainy in this part of the country. Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, southern Indiana, 1 to 3 inches of rain, very likely. Not out of the question here at all. And, that could easily lead to a couple isolated flooding spots. And also, it's going to be easy to uproot some of these trees. They're going to be very wet in the soil, from all of this rainfall. And then you get a big gust of wind that knocks that tree over. And unfortunately, more times than not, there's a power line nearby that gets taken down with it. So power outage is going to be a big-time problem with this storm as well. All right. That's the Ohio River Valley. Let's discuss the southeast now and, what kind of, strong wind gusts we could see in this part of the country. So let's go ahead and move this ahead in time a little bit. Again, today, not too bad. It gets gusty this afternoon for sure, but it's overnight tonight that the winds really pick up here. Mississippi, very strong winds here. Same story for northern Alabama. We looked at Tennessee already. These winds continue to pick up during the overnight hours, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, again, very strong winds, especially embedded in this squall line here. You'll notice, let me pick a different color so you can see it a little bit easier here. But you'll notice very strong winds here with that, line of storms we looked at earlier. And this wind threat continues to push eastbound during the afternoon. Going into kind of about, 1 o'clock here, that very strong wind threat now up through southeastern Georgia, much of South Carolina into North Carolina, seeing these very strong winds gusting as well. And that continues to slowly work eastbound, and it's going later into the afternoon tomorrow. Now, we could see winds gusting up near 60 miles an hour here through sections of eastern South Carolina, kind of near Florence, back near Lumberton, North Carolina, Fayetteville, Greenville, North Carolina, even back down towards Charleston, very gusty winds. And those stay gusty throughout the overnight Tuesday and into Wednesday. Kind of a second batch of wind moves through about midnight here, Tuesday going into Wednesday, before I think Wednesday afternoon we finally calm down a little bit. Now, rain also going to be a big-time problem in this part of the country, as I talked about earlier and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, down here into the southern Blue Ridge, those southern-facing slopes. We're going to get so much wind energy here kind of out of the south. It's going to hit those mountains. It's going to rise up, and, we're going to get a lot of precipitation to form there and really ring out. Maybe 3 to 5, maybe even half a foot of rainfall here in places like Transylvania County. Again, north of Highway 11 in upstate South Carolina, I would not be surprised to see some rain gauges hit half a foot of rain here, when all is said and done. Very easy to come by, I think. As you get into the Piedmont, though, of the Carolinas and up into North Carolina, again, 1 to 3 inches of rain, a little bit more likely, as this will be more of a quick hit with the squall line compared to, long-lasting rain, thanks to that topography. And same story down here, where the storms are going to be moving a little bit slower tonight. We could, again, see 3 to 5 inches of rain in southern Mississippi and Alabama. That could easily lead to some flooding concerns as well. Now, the Weather Prediction Center here agrees today they have a moderate risk of excessive rainfall here from southern Louisiana here through kind of the New Orleans area back up towards Biloxi and even near Mobile, Alabama. But also that flooding threat stretches inland towards Birmingham, Atlanta, Jackson, Mississippi, Baton Rouge, and even up near Tupelo. We could see, some flooding concerns this afternoon and evening. Now tomorrow, that threat shifts off to the east, and again, there's that bullseye right over upstate South Carolina and southwestern North Carolina. Again, could see half a foot of rain, not out of the question, and obviously that's going to lead to some flooding concerns there for a lot of places there, kind of like Kiwi River, up into those mountain streams that eventually flow down. I know where I'm from in Pickens, we have kind of a once in a 10-year flood that we see a lot of the times there with our creek there that likes to come out of its stream. Could happen tomorrow. I'm not saying it will, but it's kind of one of those days that you just want to be prepared for something like that whenever you're getting these kind of red colors on your map from the Weather Prediction Center. Alrighty, that is that part of the country. Now let's move it up towards the northern mid-Atlantic here and into the northeast. Again, I think overnight tonight, I should mention this, we could get a quick burst of ice in the higher terrains of North Carolina up into the higher terrains of Virginia. That is definitely not out of the question. The good news is, though, rain takes over pretty quickly, and by the time we're getting into, tomorrow afternoon, that shield of precipitation is slowly working on in here. So you'll notice here comes all of this rain out of the southeastern part of the country. Is slowly working northbound, and I think tomorrow we're going to start with a nice hit of snow here through much of Pennsylvania and up into upstate New York. You'll notice that blue taking over. This is going into tomorrow evening. Could very easily see some snow, and even winter storm criteria likely to be met up here through Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and sections of upstate New York. Now, south of there, it's going to be a flooding threat through Pennsylvania, Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, even really much of Massachusetts, and even down into sections of Virginia here. This is going to be a flooding event by far compared to a snow event. This is overnight tomorrow, and look at this squall line. Again, very gusty winds here, but also just absolutely torrential rainfall slowly working eastbound. And we're already seeing heavy rain ahead of that here through much of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, southern New York state here going into the evening hours of tomorrow. Again, same time, snow breaking out here in those areas we talked about. We'll take a look at snowfall totals here in just a moment for those folks. Now, here comes that squall line. Overnight tomorrow, about 10 p.m. here, very heavy rainfall, very strong winds moving through D.C., Baltimore, back down towards Richmond and kind of the Virginia Beach area, and then upwards north towards Philadelphia, specifically Harrisburg at this point, and up into the Finger Lakes. Very heavy rainfall, gusty winds working on through. Now, about midnight tomorrow, this is when that flooding threat really takes over for these highly populated areas of the Northeast as this line of very heavy, rain moves on through here. Through New Jersey, Long Island, Pennsylvania, up through Hartford, and even into Providence. Still holding on to snow there in the higher terrains of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Again, could be a good snowstorm for you folks, but the bigger concern here, again, is all of this flooding. Look at all this rain moving through overnight. Again, you're going to have a way to get watches in the morning. So the worst of this, flooding-wise, will be overnight. So if you live near, a flood-prone area, maybe, again, make a night that you stay with somebody else that's in a bit of a safer location as all of this moves through. Now, the good news is, by the time that we're kind of waking up here on Wednesday morning, most of that, rain is kind of beginning to work out, and we're left over with a much nicer Wednesday afternoon with some scattered lake effect snow showers. Been a long day, long video here. But you'll definitely notice that. Now, I do think this model is overdoing it. This is the NAM. This is a different model than I was showing you. Only showing you it here just so it can go out far enough to kind of show the whole storm system. But again, probably overdoing that snow on the backside here by a good bit. All right, snowfall totals here. Again, I think the highest impacts will be up here into Maine and into the higher terrains of New Hampshire, where half a foot to a foot of snowfall could fall. And then kind of back towards Vermont, upstate New York, likely going to change over to rain at some point during the storm system. But before that happens, could get a quick burst of a couple inches of snow. Same story down here through West Virginia, Pennsylvania, going to change to all rain at some point, but could get a quick burst of an inch of snow or so before that changeover occurs. All right, winter storm impacts, again, moderate impacts, going to be pretty widespread here through New Hampshire and Maine. Isolated spots in those highest peaks could see major impacts with, again, just a lot of snow falling there and kind of holding on to that cold air a little bit longer. All right, rainfall totals here. Again, this is why we're going to have problems here, right here through the heart of New Jersey, specifically northern Jersey here and into areas just north of Long Island. 3 to 5 inches, potentially near half a foot of rainfall going to be an issue. And another thing I will add is we just had all of this snow this weekend. So the liquid equivalent of that is going to melt as all of this warm air pushes northward. And that, combined with whatever rain already falls, we're going to get likely, unfortunately, some very unfortunate scenes out of portions of the Northeast here with very big time river flooding. Will not be surprised to see that at all. So again, if you're in one of those flood prone areas, especially if you just got a lot of snow or you're downstream from somewhere that just got a lot of snow, maybe try to spend the day with a friend somewhere else. And Weather Prediction Center here, sure enough, they agree. Widespread areas of moderate flooding likely here from D.C. through Baltimore, Philly, up through northern Jersey, even just out of New York City there and up towards Hartford. Again, very heavy excessive rainfall likely going into tomorrow. All right, discussing Canada a little bit here. Again, I know I've got a lot of viewers up in this part of the world, so I do appreciate you folks letting me know in the comments that you enjoyed this section of the video. That helps me know to do it a little bit more often here. So we will talk about that here as well. So again, here we go. Here comes all of that snow eventually up through the Northeast and into eastern Canada here. A lot of heavy snow. Timing here would be overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. Even seeing some snow beginning to break out there through Nova Scotia, through much of the overnight Tuesday into Wednesday here, and up into kind of New Brunswick here. Now, as we go throughout the day, Wednesday, I think rain takes over for the southern section of Nova Scotia as kind of, again, that warm air gets pushed northward. But still dealing with a lot of snow here in kind of areas further towards the north, and that will continue throughout the day Wednesday before eventually that snow starts breaking out in Newfoundland and kind of surrounding areas here of Canada before I think we finally kind of fizzle out here going into our Thursday. So how much snow are we talking? I think widespread 10 to 20 centimeters of snow, likely again through much of this kind of chunk of eastern Canada. Nova Scotia, again, could start with a quick burst of 5 to 10 centimeters of snow, but I think most of you, unfortunately, are going to change back over to rain there as that warm air pushes northward. Newfoundland, a little bit different here. I think, going to stay snow more than, rain, but a little bit less precipitation to work with. So kind of the southern area here, I think, could see 10 to 20 centimeters, not out of the question. Alrighty, so that is, the first storm system, and I actually just realized that I never showed you the wind gusts for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, so I'm very quickly going to discuss that. If you will just give me 1 second to pull that up. Don't want to leave you folks hanging in this part of the country. All right, so wind gusts starting in the Mid-Atlantic here. We kind of discussed this a little bit, but we didn't really get to the northern Mid-Atlantic and kind of here into sections of West Virginia. Very gusty winds on Tuesday afternoon, you'll notice, especially here in West Virginia. Very strong winds and even going up into Pennsylvania. Same story for D.C., Baltimore. Very strong winds here throughout the day Tuesday and even into the overnight as kind of that second batch of energy moves on through. Things stay gusty in this part of the country. Now, taking a look at the Northeast here as well. Again, I know I'm kind of breezing through this, but it's kind of similar to the other parts of the country here, just very gusty throughout the entire life cycle of the storm. Again, pretty nice in the Northeast today, but here comes that wind Tuesday afternoon. Wind's getting pretty high here. I had a question about Buffalo, I think, in the comments yesterday. I answered that. Again, gusts could get up near 60 miles an hour off the lakes here. Down here into southern New England, same story. Very strong winds. Could gust up near 60 on Long Island as we're going overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. And again, same story for the higher terrains, Vermont and New Hampshire. Very strong winds likely here going into the early morning hours of Wednesday. I'm sure Mount Washington is going to record probably some kind of crazy totals there. So again, kind of flew through that, but I did want to mention it because I did forget to pull that up on our maps here. Alrighty, so that's kind of the first storm, and we're already 33 minutes through this video, so I apologize if I'm boring you to death, but let's also discuss the second storm a little bit, and kind of this Arctic outbreak that is on the way. So our GFS, I think, does a great job at showing this. Here's that first storm system. Here's the one that we just went super in-depth on, talked all about. That eventually flies up into Canada here, again, over kind of the later part of this weekend. As that's happening, though, I need you to look back west here towards the Pacific Northwest. Here comes a big area of cold air slowly working inbound here out of Canada, and this is going to be Arctic air. This is really kind of a piece of the polar vortex that is broken off here and is diving southward, bringing extremely cold air. Now, obviously, the cold air itself is a problem. Another problem, though, is as we often see with these mega troughs that happen, just like we saw or we're seeing right now, we're going to have, again, a massive trough here, and that's going to allow low pressure to form here on the divergent side of that trough. Here going into our Friday afternoon, you'll notice colors deepening there over Oklahoma and Texas and continuing to do so before eventually we've got an all-out big-time low pressure going into this coming weekend. And that eventually, works through much of the country and bringing behind it very cold air. Now, after that, We could also see another storm system. The models have been hinting at this. This one could potentially, again, very far out, plenty of time to look at it, and I'm not going to get super in depth today, but that one could potentially bring some snow or ice to the southern part of the country, specifically the southeastern United States. So stay tuned in the coming days. We'll definitely continue to look at that, and I'll continue to update you there. But again, we'll come back to that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Now, looking at temperatures here, this is going to be big time here. Big warm up kind of in front of this storm going into the east the next couple of days, but on the backside, look out west. Here comes that Arctic air, and this is going into kind of our Friday into Saturday here. Temperatures could be near 50 degrees Fahrenheit below what they should be this time of year. And that is just dangerous levels of cold, especially in a place that's already very cold. If you're watching in Montana, winters aren't necessarily kind to you. And if you subtract 50 degrees Fahrenheit from what is already, freezing cold, we're going to have big time problems. And that's going to threaten a lot of life. If they're not, if people are not in warm areas and have a way to stay warm, that's going to cause big problems. Now, going into this coming weekend, you'll notice this cold air slowly shifts eastbound, and really, we could have that Arctic air as far south and east as, the Ohio River Valley and East Coast by the time we get about a week or so out from now, about 7 to 10 days. So that is something we'll continue to watch for sure. Now, that storm system that this Arctic air is kind of going to fire off, again, is going to be problematic, and I'll mention it's already bringing big-time snowfall and rain up to the Pacific Northwest. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this video, but look at all of that snow and those blizzard warnings that we have up there due to these rounds of storms thanks to this big trough moving on through. Now, for the eastern half of the country, this is when things really get, begin to unfold, I guess, Thursday night into Friday. Low pressure begins to develop, and here we go, going into next Friday. It looks like we're just copy and pasting what we're seeing right now. Heavy snow over parts of the country, this time likely a little further south and east, and once again, very heavy rainfall and severe weather in the southeast and mid-Atlantic, as well as, I can guarantee you, very strong gusty winds as well for just about everybody. Now that kind of moves on through going into our Saturday afternoon, and again, here on the backside, here is that absolute mega area of cold air continuing to sink south and east, definitely bringing quite cold temperatures. And here's that other storm system I mentioned. I'm not going to pull this fully ahead because it does show some things that I don't want to spread all over the internet, but again, could nonetheless potentially produce some sort or resemblance of a southeastern snowstorm here about 7 to 10 days from now. But again, nothing guaranteed. All right, snowfall, though, I can guarantee you will be a big-time deal with this storm system going Friday into Saturday. A big area likely within a 24-hour span of snow here from Missouri up through northern Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. I think northwestern Ohio is a great place to be with this one, and then likely back into Canada, potentially a little bit further south than this first storm is bringing it, back towards kind of Montreal and Quebec there. And then, that kind of sneaks on out of here eventually, going later on into next week and up into eastern Canada as well, bringing some snow chances that way. Now, that will not be the only threat. Again, you're going to think I'm showing you the maps from today. Well, no, this is for our Thursday going into Friday here. We've got the threat of severe weather down through Texas, Louisiana, southern Arkansas, Mississippi. Storm Prediction Center already highlighting this area. And sure enough, the day after Friday into Saturday, here we go. Back through the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle back under the gun for severe weather. So do not let your guard down tomorrow. If tomorrow happens and you're like, okay, I just got some very strong winds, wasn't put under a tornado warning, I'm fine, do not let your guard down. Again, I cannot overemphasize that. This is one of those patterns that, unfortunately, a lot of the times we lose life because we get through one storm and everyone's like, okay, we're fine. And then 3 days later, another storm of the exact same magnitude, if not stronger, works on through, and the communities that weren't hit quite as hard the first time get hit hard by the second one. And they're just a little less prepared. So you've got to stay prepared throughout the entire duration here through the middle of January. And again, the same story for those cold temperatures. Have to have a way to stay warm here. So definitely look and reach out to local officials if you're having trouble finding somewhere to stay. I'm sure they will help you. 6 to 10 days from now, though, very cold temperatures over the heart of the country here. And that likely will spread eastbound going in the 8 to 14 day time frame. Now, in the same time frame, 6 to 10 days from now, you'll notice precipitation is also still looking more likely as more storm systems work on through. That combined with all this cold air, again, we're going to be dealing with snow and snowstorms and potentially, again, more severe weather for a while here going throughout much of January. Alrighty, again, we talked about a lot today, but unfortunately we had a lot to talk about with such a powerful storm system working on through. This video is going to be close to 40 minutes long, which honestly might be the longest I've ever posted, so I do apologize, but again, timestamps in the bottom here, and hopefully you found some use in the video and out of all of this information, and really information overload. But again, just a crazy pattern. I was watching a little bit of my buddy Mitch's video this morning, and he mentioned that this is probably the busiest pattern he's seen since he started YouTube. And he's been doing it a good bit longer than me, but I would agree that I think definitely since I've started college, this is the busiest pattern we've seen, and likely even through much of my high school time, I can't really recall, such an active pattern here. So, definitely a great time to get this information out to you folks, though, with so much active weather ongoing. With that said, though, again, stay weather aware today. Stay safe out there today and tomorrow, and don't let your guard down for this weekend upcoming. But again, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all tomorrow.